It's hard to believe now, but there was a time when radio programmers didn't want to play Alice in Chains because, as they put it, Layne's voice didn't sound right, and their record label thought the band's breakout hit shouldn't have even been included on Facelift. In today's video, let's take a look at how Alice in Chains finally broke into the mainstream. Formed in 1987 in Seattle, Washington, Alice in Chains' original lineup consisted of frontman Layne Staley, guitarist Jerry Cantrell, bassist Mike Starr, and drummer Sean Kinney. While a lot of bands sang about partying or chicks, Alice in Chains didn't, as they would tackle darker subject matter despite their goofy offstage persona. Bassist Mike Starr would tell the Lansing Journal, "We write about something to get it off our chest. We take out our aggressions on our music so we don't have to be negative in person." The band would sign to Columbia Records, and they soon started recording what would be their debut album, Facelift, in early 1990. The band would, however, soon butt heads with their record label over the inclusion of the song Man in the Box. Guitarist Jerry Cantrell would tell author Greg Prado, "I've had conversations with the record company about this, and everybody conveniently forgets the fact that nobody really liked that song. They thought it was too slow or dirgy. There was some discussion about it maybe not being on the record, and we're like, that song is killer." Despite some differences with the record label over the inclusion of the song, Columbia still made Facelift a top priority among a more pop-based roster with acts like Mariah Carey, New Kids on the Block, and CNC Music Factory. Several months before the August of 1990 release of Facelift, Columbia Records would send select retailers a free 3-song EP called We Die Young, which retailers could sell for pure profit. When Facelift eventually came out in August, Columbia gave away 40,000 free video copies of the band playing the Moore Theater to those who bought the record. Then came what would be the final piece of the puzzle, Man in the Box. But the first single would be the track We Die Young, a song about Jerry witnessing young kids dealing drugs while he was riding the bus. But that song didn't make a big splash on the charts. Alice would soon tour with a variety of acts from Poison to Extreme, and they would eventually open for Anthrax, Slayer, and Megadeth on the Clash of the Titans tour. Drummer Sean Kinney would recall to Rolling Stone, "That tour was a real challenge because we're not a speed metal band. During our set, the entire crowd would chant Slayer, 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 but we figured, hey, we could play for a Slayer crowd and not get killed. We had it made." It was around this time in early 1991, Columbia would issue the second single, Man in the Box, and the song's lyrics took on a few meanings. Layne would tell Rolling Stone in 1992, "I started writing about censorship. Around the same time, we went out for dinner with some Columbia Records people who were vegetarians. They told me about how veal was made from calves raised in these small boxes, and that image stuck in my head. So I went home and wrote about government censorship and eating meat as seen through the eyes of a doomed calf." Jerry, meanwhile, would tell the Cincinnati Enquirer, "A lot of people's lives are what they see on TV. What they see on TV isn't always the case. The song says that sometimes you gotta wake up and get out of the box which you've built yourself into." Meanwhile, Layne's mom, Nancy, would tell author Greg Prado how her son called her up one day before Facelift came out and asked her thoughts on the record. She recalled singling out Man in the Box as the sleeper hit. Jerry would admit to the Cincinnati Enquirer that the Man in the Box video was shot for about $30,000. Since it was Layne's song, he would work with director Paul Rackman over what the video should actually portray. According to David DeSola's Alice in Chains book, Layne would fax the director a handwritten note that read, "Rainy, drippy barn, farm animals, baby with eyes sewn shut." The video would end up being shot in December of 1990 in Los Angeles at the Malibu State Park over the course of just one day. However, Layne's idea with having a baby whose eyes were sewn shut had to be scrapped because it wasn't feasible. As for the barnkeeper, it would be played by a parking lot attendant of a bar owned by one of the director's friends. As 1991 rolled around, Spin magazine would choose Alice in Chains as one of the bands to watch in the upcoming year. Their hometown paper of the Seattle Times, meanwhile, would write, "The band's clearly been groomed by Columbia Records as next big thing." It was a far cry from what Facelift producer David Jordan had to say telling an interviewer about Man in the Box. At first, radio didn't want to touch it because they said that Layne's voice was wrong, because this was the time of Axl Rose and Dio and all these high voices. To say that Layne's voice is wrong, or to say that anybody's voice is wrong, is a pretty ridiculous thing to say, but that's the feedback I got. This was also confirmed by a Seattle DJ, Kathy Faulkner, who told author Greg Prado a lot of people at national radio stations were freaking out, not only for the band's name, but thinking they were too hard. I would get calls from people in New York going, "Aren't you scared to play Man in the Box?" It's like, what's there to be scared of? Jordan would reveal that it would be a radio station in Texas who finally started playing the single, and everyone else seemed to follow suit, leading us to the next part of the story. Fast forward to spring of 1991, and MTV is having its regularly scheduled weekly meeting to decide which of two videos would get the network's Buzzbin seal of approval, as David DeSola put it. One was Man in the Box, the other was a hair metal group, Blue Murder, and they had several songs at the time to pick from, including Valley of the Kings or Jelly Roll. The video being crowned as part of the Buzzbin would get a certain number of plays that week and would likely go on to become a huge hit. The folks at MTV had long grown tired of so-called hair bands, and they wanted to do something different, so they chose Alice in Chains. And the impact was almost immediate. Man in the Box would become a Buzzbin video in May of 91, and the week after it premiered on the network, Facelift went from number 166 to number 108 on the Billboard chart, and it later jumped to number 42 about 6 weeks later. Man in the Box would blow up during the Clash of the Titans tour, according to Jerry, and Facelift, which was hovering around 40,000 copies sold, soon ballooned to 500,000 by September of 1991, 13 months after the album came out. Facelift would become the first so-called grunge album to go gold, a huge feat, but it was largely overshadowed by three other Seattle bands, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and of course Nirvana, who released albums during this time. Layne would recall to Rolling Stone, "Once it got really big with Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden, there wasn't much mentioned about us. All those bands put out records around the same time, and we hadn't put one out in 2 years. I don't think it hurts us though. I'm glad we didn't get lumped together with them, because we're not those other bands." Looking back, drummer Sean Kinney would admit to Greg Prado he thought the song that was going to originally break the band would be Sea of Sorrow or the deep cut Sunshine. The video Man in the Box would receive another boost at the 1991 Video Music Awards for MTV when it was nominated for Best Metal Hard Rock Video amongst AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, and Aerosmith. Then came the opportunity of a lifetime, opening for Van Halen in late 1991 and 1992. The band would be invited to open for the group by frontman Sammy Hagar, as he told Jenny McCarthy here.
Do you ever do that? Do you ever look back and, like, kind of in hindsight and go, like, God, I am a little bit freaked out by the new guy, or I'm a little bit nervous about it? Or are you at a comfortable place?
Oh, I'm at a total comfortable place now. But when you're, like in Van Halen in the 90s, when grunge came along, you know,
right,
that was freaky, man, because I'm looking at these guys and, you know, we were sort of the glam rock, you know, we're all dressed up and dressing like girls and stuff, you know. I mean, come on.
You look pretty
Motley
fucking
Crue
fabulous.
And Poison and these guys.
More hairspray than
It was
me.
more fun dressing like that than the way I dress now, I'll tell you that. But then when grunge came and they were like, you know, down and dirty and
right.
funky.
Nirvana comes along.
Yeah, and they made me nervous. You know, I thought these guys, they're going to disrespect us. You know, they're going to, you know, look at you, say, yeah, you know, your shit's done, buddy. And it didn't happen. I was so insecure about it that I invited Alice in Chains with their first album, their first single, when they had Man in the Box, to open for Van Halen. They came out on the whole tour with us, and I've been dear friends with Jerry Cantrell since then. But that's how insecure I was. I said, no, let's get them on the damn show. That way their fans will know that we're cool and we're giving them a...
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's kind of genius, though, but it came out of a fear.
Yeah, it came out of fear a little bit. Not bad fear, but like nervousness. It came out of a nervous.
But then also a kind of an intelligent one, because I bet it worked.
It did. No, they did really good, and you know, business was good, and and I made a friend out of it, you know.
Still friends with him?
Oh yeah, Jerry and I. He comes to Cabo for my birthday bash every friggin' year.
That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Rock Roll Your Stories. Take care.